how did you make that transition from, okay, I love fishing.
Right.
How do I make this into a career?
Well, it was interesting when I was young, and I just always loved fishing. I always thought when I grew up, maybe I'd like own a resort or be a guide, something like that, where I could make money fishing. So that was always my goal. Obviously, I went through college and I got a computer science degree and a math degree. And just to make money, I went to work for IBM for about 10 years. But while I was at IBM, I kept fishing, and I got into a really competitive fishing club in Rochester, Minnesota, where they would actually have boaters and non-boaters. And I didn't have a boat, so I just go as a non-boater. And just the competitive juices of that, just winning trophies was like, God, I really like doing this, competing like this, And about that time, Gary Parsons had started 1 year before me fishing some local tournaments. And he said, you got to get in some of these tournaments. It's just the best thing. And it's just fun. It's just the excitement and the thrill of taking off and catching just magnitudes, all of the fish catches and things. So I started fishing with a guy from IBM. He still pre-fishes with me to this day, Jeff Stevenson. And we got into the MWC when it was first starting, the manufacturer's walleye circuit, the team circuit. And we actually had pretty good success. We qualified for the championship our first 2 years. And then by the third year, Gary had switched partners, and Jeff didn't really want to keep kind of going at it as hardcore as I like to. So that's when Gary and I got together and started fishing all the tournaments together. And it just kind of blossomed from there. I mean, we had really good success our first year together, won a team of the year, angler of the year, or team of the year and championship, and got a few sponsors. And lo and behold, sponsors just kind of kept coming. We started working real hard for the sponsors. And eventually by 1991, so about 5 years into my tournament life, I quit IBM to do this full time. And about a half year after that, Gary quit being a dentist to do it full time. And that's kind of where it all started.
So I was recently in the Rochester area, and I drive past IBM whenever I'm going down to like southeastern Minnesota to trout fish or whatever. And whenever I drive past that building, I think you every single time I go, Keith used to work there. So what did you do there?
I was a computer programmer on software, internal software. Actually, the last several projects I did were kind of the forefront of internet. We were working on getting computers to talk to each other over long distances. At that time, our big customer was Walgreens, and they wanted to have it so anybody could walk into any Walgreens and get their prescription filled, even though their Walgreens was thousands of miles away. So we actually got computers to talk to each other. And again, that was about 3 or 4 years later is when the internet came out. And so we were kind of the forefront of that, getting computers to talk to each other and network and things like that. So it was a great job. I really did love IBM. I got really lucky at IBM because I had a manager who loved to fish. And so he would let me take time off without pay to get to tournaments. He'd let me take time off to go and do seminars. And eventually when I decided I was going to quit, he basically said, hey, listen, go and try it. If it don't work out, you want to come back in the next 2 or 3 years, you're welcome right back. You can have your job back. So it wasn't as much of a kind of jumping off the deep end as some people might think. I'm going from a very successful computer science career to fishing. But once I got in fishing and things went well, continued to win, did continue to get more and more sponsors. I just kind of never looked back. So it was a really nice transition. It was a great 10 years at IBM, but it's been better 31 years after it now. So.
Would you have ever thought that that's how life would have turned out for you when you're?
No. And in fact, my wife will take credit for it, because if I hadn't married her, she's Gary's sister, the Parsons family. If I had never met the Parsons family, I would have probably never gotten to tournament fishing, and I'd probably still be at IBM right now. Just taking fishing trips wherever I could all around the world. So it worked out great.
No doubt. So you went from when you were at IBM, what fisheries were you hitting up? You were going over to Red Wing, or like
mainly red wing is what we'd hit. We take trips up north to my dad's cabin in northern Wisconsin. We go out by, what was it, out to the west, or Faribault or whatever. There's a few lakes.
Yeah.
Few out that way, which was horrible fishing, really hard fishing.
Yeah, no, that's like Cannon River to
it was
probably.
Mainly red wing, and then Pepin. We got pretty good at Pepin too. So that was kind of where I cut my teeth. So I had a lot of river experience. The nice thing, Gary, was Winnebago and over in Wisconsin. And so he had a lot of lake experience. So we kind of were a pretty good fit together. We could go pretty much anywhere and had the techniques down to catch some fish.
So that transition, where do you remember where you were? Like try to put us into that moment where you're like, okay, I am going to give this a run now. I'm going to let go of the the IBM job, and things have lined up so that the sponsors are there. Because let's face it, especially back then, right? And this is what I think I've said this to you and Gary, like, it's one thing to, and it's all very difficult, but it's one thing to make a career in bass fishing, right? It's a totally different thing to make a career in walleye fishing. I would say there's far fewer there's fewer opportunities there, especially that long ago. So that's crazy. Like, how?
I think the biggest thing that kind of I learned real early on is that nobody pays you to fish. I mean, there's very few even bass anglers that get just, all they got to do is fish and people cover them or whatever. I mean, you basically don't get paid to fish. What you do is you fish to get credibility. You fish to learn things. You fish to figure out things. And then your job is to teach people what you did. That's my job, is to go out and try and make or help people catch more fish. A good example of that is shiver minnows. Me and Gary did 1 and 2 in a tournament when nobody was casting shiver minnows, glide baits. And we could have just kind of sat on that information and probably won several more tournaments before the word got out. But we always figured our job is to tell people what we do. And so we right away did a show on shiver minnows. We wrote about shiver minnows. We taught as many people as we could about shiver minnows. And that's just the way we've always done things. We don't kind of hide these secret techniques. When we figure out something like that, we try and tell people that, because that's what we get paid for by sponsors. They want us having people search us out for our knowledge, basically. And that's what sponsors are paying us for. And what sponsors give you is a nice steady income, instead of tournament income, which can be really good. It can be really bad. So you get all these valleys and mountains in tournament fishing, and just by having a good set of sponsors that allow us to design tackle or design rods or design boats or get things just the way we like them, which also makes it easier then to talk about, because it's exactly what I want. Having that good set of sponsors was just really key. And we had pretty much gotten to that point before I quit IBM. The problem is I was kind of doing both jobs kind of half. I was half being a good programmer, half being a good promoter and fisherman, and not really doing one excellently. And so I had to make that decision. And I eased into it a little bit, went to halftime at IBM, then went down to quarter time at IBM, and then finally went all the way. So it was more of a gradual. There was no one day where I just said, oh, I'm going to do this. It was pretty much gradual and working it out with my bosses, my wife, my family, and things like that I kind of eased into it. But in 91, it was, see IBM, I'm going fishing.
So tell me what that first year was like. Was it like eating grilled cheese? I mean, peanut butter. What was that like, making that jump? We had quite a few sponsors by then. We had some good sponsors back then with Skeeter, and we always have had Mercury. We had Lowrance back then. We were pretty much with the same companies we were in '88. Very few changes. We switched from Skeeter because the guy who built our Skeeter boats went to work at Tracker and started building boats there and wanted us to come and help him doing there. So we kind of stayed with the person instead of the company there, which turned out to be a great thing. I mean, Bass Pro is just
been a wonderful sponsor. They've supported walleye fishing, and their name Bass Pro means just that. They know nothing about walleye fishing. So they kind of relied on us to push them in the right direction and get the right products in their stores and things like that. And it's just been a really wonderful thing. And Johnny Morris is just one of the greatest guys in our sport, and just the way he does conservation and kind of forward thinking about our sport, not just bass fishing, but all of fishing, has really just been super important for me in my career. But like I said, that good list of sponsors is really, really important.
So yeah, you guys,
not easy. You got 10, 12. It's not easy having a big list of sponsors, because every one of them's your boss. And so they all want something. They all want something different. They all want time. They all want meetings. And so it's nice having a lot of sponsors, kind of like a big stock portfolio, but it's also 12, 14 different bosses at one time.
Thanks for watching this clip from another fishing podcast. If you want to listen to the whole episode, all you got to do is click the link in the description, or to watch the full video, become a patron for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/anglinguploaded.